All right, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This is our second PRS meet and greet. The first one we had with Jim was probably 8-9 years ago, something like that. We try to do stuff like this every now and then, and this is our first to have Kenny with us. It was something that Jim and I concocted. Thought that maybe if Kenny could play a few songs, it'd be more fun. And we can talk about we're going to talk about the guitars, the way they're made. We've been running the film for a while on the factory. But first, I just want to let you know that what we're doing tonight is we're going to have a giveaway with some shirts and hats and stuff. We're going to do a little trivia contest, and anybody that's up on PRS or listens really well early on, then they'll have a better chance of winning some stuff. But there's quite a few things, and I'm sure everybody's going to get something. Right now, I wanted to introduce you to a guy. Well, I guess almost everybody knows who this fella is here. He's from Houston. You are from Houston, yes. Born and raised here. Been part of the music scene since he was just a young lad, and with local band The Children and Wayne Cochran, and of course my favorite Jocko. One of my favorite musicians of all time, and grew up playing music with guys like Billy Gibbons, and I asked Kenny, I said, you've got a lot of stories, you've got a lot of things that you've learned, and we actually, all of us guys who wanted to live the rock and roll lifestyle, but we weren't very good. We all had to get jobs. We don't
have to be good.
Well, we don't have to be good, just fairly okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we live vicariously watching him play and playing in the studio and playing with all kinds of famous folks. But it's great having him here as a teacher. For those folks that didn't know that he teaches here, he's been here for about 7 years. I'm really proud to have him. He's had the Rock Camp Live for about 10 years and had great success with that. But right now, I want him to play a little bit.
Thank you, Danny.
Kenny Cordray.
Well, just like to thank Danny and PRS and all you folks for coming, and we're gonna have a good time. I have 3 tracks that I've extracted from some albums that I've recorded over the last, I guess, 10 years. So what you're going to hear is you're going to hear studio from an album that the guitars have been stripped down a little bit, and it's going to come in. I'm going to play along with it, and then we're going to do that. So let's get going. Make sure everything's on here. I'm on one-man band, but I'm not used to. Y'all ready?
Thank you.
right, okay. So that was a song called, I'll give you all a little background. I produce folks, and I'm fortunate enough to play in the studio here in Houston and other places. And what happens, I have a home studio that I do the demos for the clients or the folks that before I play the tunes, and I always have a working title to these tunes, so I can, when I put them in the computer. So this working title, was called Meditation Draws. And then when I did it on the album, it turned into First in Magazine, which was, by the way, I do have some CDs up here if y'all would like to get some. And so that was Meditation Draws. So Danny wanted me to talk about a little bit of, what it was like on the road, and, what it was like then, what it's like now, and all that kind of stuff. I grew up, initially, I grew up in Dallas, in Oak Cliff, how many people, famous guitar players, from Oak Cliff? Stevie Ray Vaughan, T-Bone, a lot of folks, Jimmy Vaughan. And so I moved to Houston in the mid-'60s, 66, something like that, and got into garage bands and started playing teen canteens, and I don't know if you guys remember any of these things, maybe you do. It's a lot of fun. I cut my teeth in the garage, learning Animal songs and Gloria and, Hey There Little Red Riding Hood and things like that. And then when I was 14, I was fortunate enough, I was hanging out in music stores, kind of like Danny's, and a salesman took a liking to me, and he wanted to know if I wanted to start going to some concerts with him to help him load in all these huge Vox amplifiers, Super Beatles. And literally, this was Evans Music back in the day, and this was like 68, something like that. And so one night, we went out with a band full of Vox Super Beatles to go to a concert for a band called The Children, and they just had an album out. They were a really big deal. They had a major thing, and everyone was really, excited about the band. And so we get there, and we're standing there, and the guitar player, they're going to go on stage here in about 5 minutes, and there's no guitar player at all. Great story. I just happened to have my guitar because Sean, this is the guy's name, made me put it in the van. He says, "Oh, never. If you're going to be a musician, wherever you go, take your guitar. I don't care if you're going to the store, take your guitar with you." Right? So I got to get on stage and play with the band The Children. And then finally, about 30 minutes later, the guitar player showed up, a great guy named Bill Ash, who's since passed away. But that started the whole thing. That was it. Now, from there on, it was on. And at 14 years old, I joined The Children, signed my first major recording contract, and started the stuff. And along the way, and I'll talk about it a little bit after the next song or something, along the way I met Billy Gibbons, and I met, a lot of other great people, really, Johnny Winter, tons of folks that I crossed paths with, and started, really doing it for real. And, had no formal training, really. I think I may have taken 2 guitar lessons. I took one when I was a kid in Oak Cliff, and I took one from a gentleman named Mike Butler. Now, Jim will probably remember Mike Butler. Y'all remember Mike? He's passed away too, but he taught me Purple Haze. That's when he ruined me. I was not the same after that. So I did Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. It was all over. So total Jimi Hendrix freak. Okay, this next tune is off an album that I had the pleasure of doing for Mr. Tim Hudgens. I don't know if Tim said he was going to be here, but he's not. He lied to me. And it's called Writing in the Sand, and it's a little ballad thing. So bear with me if I destroy this, because all the disclaimers in the world. Okay. All right. Nice. How do you like it so far?
Good.
Yes. Yeah, that was hard to do. It's hard to do. That would be hard to do with a band besides. Hey, hold on. No, sir. All right, so moving forward, 14, 15 years old, I became really, really good friends with the lead singer, and they were from San Antonio. So the band was from San Antonio, so I'd go back and forth to San Antonio. The lead singer's name was Steve Perrone. He passed away in the early 70s. And he and I kind of became Texas' answer to, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. We were the Texas Rolling Stones, what we were. And we got signed to another label. We got signed to a gentleman named Lou Adler. And Lou Adler produced Jan and Dean, Mamas and the Papas, Spirit, Monterey, Carole King, Monterey Pop Festival, just to name a few. So this guy was huge. And we went out to California. And at that time I was like 15 or 16. I was absolutely sure I was going to be a rock star the rest of my life and ride around in limos and all that kind of good stuff. But what happened was we recorded half our album there and we went back home and it fizzled. But in the fizzling, Steve and I wrote a song, and we wrote a song together. And I came to him one day. I'd been playing in my mother's apartment in my bedroom, and I was playing this riff, and it kind of went. Y'all recognize that, you guys? Francine. So we did Francine. But I wanted to call it Bernadine because I like Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry had a lot of Dean names: Maybelline, Chamberlain, Summerline. He had a lot of Chuck Berry, isms. And so he went back, and I had the riffs, and he was going to write some lyrics, and he came back, a couple of weeks later into Houston. I said, well, good. I got the lyrics written, but we can't call it Bernadine because we can't have that. We're going to call it Francine. So that was the beginning of that song. We did not write it for ZZ Top. We were friends. Billy had been hanging out with a good friend of ours in the band named Kurt Linhoff, who went on to sell all the Stars guitars. The famous Hot Lana Burst that Dwayne Allman played actually came out of San Antonio. I actually had a chance at it. If I could have dug up $200, the guy that wanted to sell it had just gotten it out of the, I think it was Caldwell Music in San Antonio. The headstock had been broken. And he was a kid, and he came to a concert I was doing in San Antonio along with another friend of mine named Chris Geppert, who went on to become Christopher Cross. I don't know if y'all remember Christopher Cross. I'm gonna ride like the wind, sailing takes me away. All that kind of stuff. Well, he's ultra famous, right? So if I'd had $200, I could have had that guitar along with, hello, that's my wife's phone, I know that anywhere. $200 and my gold top, and I could have had the most famous Les Paul in the world, one that got away kind of deal. So where was I? Francine, right? And so that kind of fizzled, and I went and started doing what I call the Texas Toilet Tour in Conalon vans. We played every crazy. My friend Jeff knows we'd go to Dallas and play Gertie's. This place was one step up from a toilet. I mean, it just literally was about like that. And we did kind of learn the stuff, on the hard way, if you know what I mean. And somewhere in the middle of that, I was in Houston, and a gentleman named David Foster came down, and I was playing in a pizza parlor of all places with a guy named, I think I was playing with Dean Scott. I don't know, maybe not. But anyway, his name was David Foster, and he had a band called Skylark, and he had been told up in Canada that the greatest guitar players were in Texas. So he got they were on Capitol Records. He convinced them to fly him all the way down to Texas to go find a Texas guitar player. By gosh, he's a Texas man. So he came in to see me, and David Foster, I mean, my God, is ridiculous. I mean, he's produced everybody from now to Barbra Streisand, Chicago, Michael Jackson, blah, 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 blah. Just everybody in the world. Sweet guy, very gifted guy. So he convinced me to come join his band, and I did, and we played a bunch of concerts, and I was on my way back to California with them. We were actually driving. Something happened with the manager. We were driving back to Los Angeles, and I stopped in my mother's apartment. She said, "There's this crazy man calling you named Wayne Cochran, and he's in New York, and he wants you to get on a jet tomorrow morning and come join his band." I'm like, "Is that guy nuts? That's crazy." I mean, But I remembered that I had met him when they played here in Houston at a club called Lava Steel downtown, which was the big jazz club. And in that band was Jaco Pastorius. And I'll never forget, Jaco came around the corner on his break to where I was playing and walked up to me. And this was in the early 70s, where we all had long hair and high-heeled boots, and I mean we had this whole it was on. And this guy looked like he just got out of the Marines. I mean, he had a short haircut and everything. And he walked right up the stage, and right between a break and the song, he goes, "You got to come see me play." And I was like, "Oh God, this is good." There's a nut in every building, right? But for some reason, he said, "I'm playing around the club, around the corner at Lava Steel. Come see me play. I'll leave your name at the door." And so for some reason on the break, I said, "Okay, I'll bite." So I rode around the block, and that club in downtown Houston, you had to walk down a set of stairs. You had to walk in. It was like a basement club. You had to walk down into it. And the more I walked down, the slower I walked, because I could hear this incredible bass coming out of this thing, and these incredible horns, and this wall of sound that made Chicago sound like an ant, a horn band, and it was Jaco. And so later on, Jaco asked me to join the band, but I didn't join at that time. I went ahead and went out to California, and then back to the story in New York. So I did get on a plane and fly to New York and join Wayne Cochran when I was 19 years old. And these are guys, talk about the buses back then, there were no bunks. They were just buses, seats. You got 2 seats. That's how you did it. You put your bags up on the top. You got 2 seats. Your guitars went under the bay and everything else. And we literally did one-nighters every night for about 275 nights a year. I was in the band 2 years. A city a night. No roadies, no nothing. City a night. Boom, boom, boom. And our road manager was a guy named Bernie Human, and he went on to be Ziegfeld and Roy's personal manager and Muhammad Ali. So he made it big in Vegas, and good for him. All right, so that kind of catches us up to all of the stuff I'm sort of infamous for. Got the chance to hang around and rub elbows with these people. And now's the time, if anyone has any questions, about guitars or how I did it or what I used or whatever, if it's any, if you want to know, now's the time for you to ask me. Then I'm going to play one more song and we'll get on to the good stuff.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about how you warm up and what you do to keep in shape?
I used to be pretty good at that, Daddy. I'm not as near it. Okay,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you have daily routines that you do to.
Okay, yeah.
Unlike myself, which is I wait until the day before the gig or a couple hours before the gig. I say, "Ooh, I gotta learn that song."
Right.
That's
Okay,
my routine.
so let me go back in time when I was really good at it. So let me go back to the Wayne Cochran Band. Now, the Wayne Cochran Band, it was a horn band, huge horn band, 7 horns, 3-piece rhythm section. When we got to the gig, you can imagine what was going on. Horn players have to warm up an hour. They cannot play unless they warm up. And trumpet players and saxophone players all playing into the wall. It's crazy. So I got tired of it, so I started just joining in with them, just blah, 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 playing scales, whatever. So to make a long story short, yeah, you should warm up. You really should. You're gonna play a lot better. Every time I've done that, the gigs that I can really remember some that I spent 10, 20, 30 minutes doing that, the gig was a lot better. It really was. So my warm-up thing would be, sit down, start playing scales really slow, maybe go over some changes that are a little bit more difficult in songs, little, transition changes, things like that. And kind of get loose. I mean, I don't care how old you are. I mean, when I was warming up, the most I ever warmed up was when I toured with Wayne Cochran, and I was 19, so I really didn't. Now, fast forward, I'm having all kinds of issues because I'm basically a studio musician. I play a gig every month or something like that. So it's like jumping off the cliff. It's ridiculous. I have to sit in my room and play a lot. Number one, I can't remember my own songs. Number two, I gotta relearn my songs. Number one. Number two, everything's starting to wear out. I mean, so it's kind of crazy, It's but it's better. If you want to get better, you got to get if you sit down, at least 5 to 10 minutes, and especially when I teach folks and they can't, we'll be doing lines and they're not quite getting it. I said, look, just take it home with you, take this line home, take this, whatever the song is, take it home and play it slow and work on these specific little things that you need to do to be able to execute it. Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you for that.
Excellent.
Anybody else?
Here's a car question for you.
Yes, sir.
The pictures are on your website.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the Explorer is that?
That was Kurt Linhoff's. That was a great picture. That was Kurt Linhoff's. He was one of the first guys to ever get, those kind of guitars. He just had the knack for it. He would find Explorers, flying V's. He actually had a Modern. He actually had a real one. He found it in a guy's garage, hung up on a nail in San Antonio. The split stock Explorer, right? So that was his guitar, and that was a funny story with Billy Gibbons on that one. Billy used and still does like to pull tricks on you. He called me one afternoon and said, "Hey, you want to go eat dinner?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he picked me up, and we were driving down 10. And he's in the back seat. His girlfriend's driving him in the front or wherever, and he's got this dobro and he's playing. So we get out around, Katy, something like that. And I said, Hey, where are we going to dinner? This is getting a little long. He goes, "Oh, I didn't tell you. We're going to San Antonio to eat at El Chico." Right? So we go to San Antonio, which is where Steve lived. And so that picture was taken out in front of Steve's house in Alamo Heights, which is like River Oaks in Houston, right? And the Cadillac's there, and that Billy had the Dobro, and I had the Explorer, and the rest is history on that one. Man, I've played some of the finest guitars in the world, but none of them were mine except 2. And I did have, I had a couple of 57, actually 58 gold tops. And one of them I played with Wayne Cochran. I traded to a kid in New Orleans that he got a mint gold top from George Gruen. And I toured with that for a couple of years and it got stolen from me. So I hate guitars now. Yes, sir.
You would tour across the country in the 70s. How much would y'all go out looking for guitars?
Always.
What's some good
Oh, I'm
stories?
sorry. Sir?
I grew up a trombone player during a growth spurt, so its line stays the same length, my arm got longer.
Oh, God.
You're having to learn the positions and all that.
Right.
And we hear guitarists all the time, well, I can't play guitar because my fingers start to stuff.
Right.
And others, Eric Johnson, for example, long skinny fingers and all that stuff. Have you seen anybody that made any difference to?
Not really. Not really. Is it a little bit of an advantage to have long, skinny fingers? Yeah, probably a little bit. But man, if you want to play guitar, it doesn't matter what your fingers look like. It's really, what's a good word for it? If you have that kind of passion to play music and you'll persevere through it, no problem.
I've got enough for the bass. That's enough space.
I'm sorry, Gary. So you had a touring thing? You have a question?
Not good.
Well, he had asked about pawn shops. Yeah. In the 70s, pawn shops were where you found all the guitars. Simple as that. And sometime, I'm sorry, I take that back. I did have a 1959 Sunburst that I bought in Fort Lauderdale, and it was in a window. And it was completely, the finish was gone. It was completely a Nunburst. And it was in a window in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that I bought for $500. I bought that one for $500. I forget what happened to that. I think I traded it. I bought my first gold top for $600, something like that, $500-$600. That was the going price for those kind of guitars back
What are they now?
then. Oh God. Well, Sunburst, one of them just went for what? $500,000. They can get stupid. $500,000. Gold tops, I don't think are not that. Yeah. So it's like I had a bunch of Marvel comic books, right? And I sold those to get to go to the shows when I would go with my grandparents, and I had a stack like these, and if I'd have kept them, I'd be rich. I could retire on those things because I had first Spider-Man and Iron Man. I had all this stuff. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to attempt to play. Anybody else? Before I do my last little thingy here. I'm going to play some country for you, or attempt it anyway. And this is, yeah, yeah. This is another tune that I wrote for Tim Hudgens. It's called Soul Provider. And let's see if we get this working here. All right, thank you all. Thank you very much.
All right, Kenny Cordray, any great?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, right now I want to introduce to you a guy, Jim Russell. He's been my PRS rep for 10 years. He's from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's owned and managed several stores since his time in the music business. Started out as a kid at some of the first guitar shows in Dallas and Arlington. When he started selling and buying and selling stuff when he was just a young teenager, he decided he wanted to get into the resale business and the guitar business and probably be a rock star somewhere in between.
I
And
don't play as good as Kenny.
he says he doesn't play as good as Kenny, but I've seen him play. He's not too bad, not too shabby. Anyway, let's see. What's really interesting about this guy is I've had a chance to spend a lot of time just talking to him about the music business and the guitar business and all the minutiae of the different guitar brands. He has more knowledge about what Gibson and Fender and all the little brands, and of course PRS. He knows probably more about PRS company than anybody I know. So if there's anything you ever want to know about PRS or any guitar company, he's got it. And we talked about last time we went to lunch. He said, I think when I retire, I'm going to write a book about all this stuff. So he's known a lot of guys and been doing it since he's a kid in the 70s. But what he's going to talk about tonight is PRS. That's why we got together. I asked him to come down here. He brought some of his guitars. Most of these guitars up here are ours, but he brought some special models like this acoustic. He brought a couple of nice acoustics up here to show off that we don't normally stock. And we have, if anybody is interested, we're running a special on all of the PRSs that we have here for tonight. So if there's anything that floats your boat that looks interesting, now's a good time to do it. We're at the end of when he talks about the new models and the stuff that goes into it. We're going to have a little trivia contest and give away some shirts and hats, and I hope you stick around for that. Okay, right now let's have a big hand for Jim Russell.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I'd like to thank Dan for hosting this. It's great. I'm assuming that we've got several PRS owners here. I'll kind of start with a basis of where the company came from. Most of you already know. I'll kind of just jump to point B. 2015 was our 30th anniversary. Paul started the company, basically 85 was when it came to fruition, when he had the first factory. There were already two giants on the market that had been well established, well entrenched, as you all know, Gibson and Fender. Paul came onto the scene at a time when making a traditional guitar was not exactly popular. It was the middle of the 80s. Everybody wanted a Ferrari paint job and a pointed headstock on their guitar, which was not what PRS was after. We've jumped forward 30 years. I want to keep kind of brief here so I don't bore you with the details of where it's all gone. Most of you'll know it was an upper end guitar. It still is, but the past couple of years we have vastly changed the price point, changed the game. 5 years ago, the average price on what we were doing was a street price guitar of $2,500. Now we've got American-made guitars with nitro finish for $1,000 map. So we've definitely moved a lot of things there. A lot of new models involved. I'm just going to kind of start through here. If you have any questions on any of it as we go, stop me. I'll kind of, if you want to know where the guitar came from, where the whole idea behind the specific piece was, ask me. I'll be glad to help you in, because it's awfully broad to try and cover the PRS line in an hour and all of the models, all the SKUs, all the features. So just jump in at any point and stop me. One guitar that we came back out with, we made a CE model in the core line for years. We backed off of it in 2008, just over cost. We had made some changes. We came back out with the guitar this year. It's under the S2 line. It's American made. It's an S2, Stevensville. That's what that stands for. We've made a few changes. If you're familiar with the original, and you'll notice, and I'll give you some comparison here. If you take a look, I have a hard time hearing it, so you can see the carve on the top of the guitars. We still do the same dish carve on all the core line. When we came back out with the CE, we changed the bevel on the top, just slightly. 2 reasons. Number one, bolt-on neck guitar. Bolt-on neck guitar, comfort contour, but the cost came down on this guitar significantly when we changed it into the S2 line, $19.95 MAP, which was unheard of at that price point for us for an American-made guitar 5 years ago. So we are back out with it. Another S2. We're doing several pieces in the line. I'm just going to go down the line here with what we've got. Semi-hollow custom 22. There again, this guitar, map figure of $1,600, all American made. So big change there. Previously, custom 22s, semi-hollow models, mostly were in the artist package, which was a $3,500 guitar. So big difference there. Standard 22, basically the same guitar that we've made. We made a standard back in the 90s, which was in the core line. Only difference in it and the rest of the core line, it was a maple top guitar on the 22s. This is an all mahogany guitar, nitrocellulose finish. There again, price point has come way down for us.
Excuse me, is it, I always get quilted and flamed kind of mixed up, so the striping that's on the wood, the beauty of the wood, what?
That's all maple. That'll be a maple, like a maple cap. Now mahogany, we use, most of you, and if, I don't know if you can get most of you kind of have an idea. Flame top and quilt top is going to be all, it's maple. So we already use mahogany in the back of these guitars. We did a whole mahogany guitar in core several years ago, but we did a satin finish on it. We had to do it in poly, which different finish, different things we didn't like about it at the time. Went to nitro and made a lot of difference in it. But what you're seeing, which is what we're known for,
Right.
are maple tops. But we are using a lot of mahogany. We do use some quilted mahogany now. We also figured mahogany gets expensive, so we try to limit that,
So
upper
this
end
maple,
models.
these are just the
You're
rough
talking
lines?
about the difference between the quilted and the flame?
I'm just asking, is that quilted or flame?
No,
Or
that's
is
Yeah,
that just
flame.
the
That's-
line?
Yeah,
Flame.
the flame is the lines, quilted is more like this.
Okay. So
You'll
this is
you'll
flame.
see a lot of different connotations in different guitar. I won't even say different companies. Guitar aficionados for years and years and years. The wood suppliers refer to flame as curly. Most people in this part of the country that grew up looking at Billy Gibbons' bursts refer to quilt as curly,
Here,
but
this is a quilt.
Oh, I see.
So, it's a lot
It's
different.
almost like tiger eye,
Yeah, it's like this as opposed to more straight lines. And generally, if it's real even all the way across, that's how you get a 10 top. So
Right.
that no matter how you look at it, it looks nice everywhere. It's real unusual to have that kind of wood. You have to go through a lot of
Well,
wood
and you'll
to
see
get a
different,
really nice top like this.
you'll,
and this.
you'll see different chevron sizes, the different in the graining, the spacing between where the sapwood is, different sizes, different, the same as quilt. If you look at different quilt, you'll see different size blooms in the quilt. Some are 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter. They grade it up heavier as it gets 25 millimeter. The larger, the better, of course. In us, what you wind up with, we have different levels of maple, both in quilt and in flame. You've got starting down at the lower level, you've got CE grade, then you've got non-tin grade, you've got tin top grade, and you have artist package grade, and at the very top you have private stock, which most of it is all what the chevron size is and what the bloom size is where that relates to. Sonically, the whole thing with quilt, flame, as you guys know, everyone here I think is probably a guitar player. You'll find one guy that will swear by flame and swear at quilt, and you'll find the next guy, it's a Ford Chevy argument. The problem today is finding quilt that is consistent in size. We have a terrible time finding it also where we know where it came from, because that's a twofold problem. Number one, the logistics and the legality of where the wood came from. The other is it can be 100% legit. PRS we bought, if you're into PRS, and I don't want to talk above anybody that's not totally into it, if you monitor, I know Derek he can fill you on some of this back here, he's totally into it. We bought a batch of mahogany and maple. Some of it was referred to as sinker mahogany. Long story short, it was way before Proposition 65 came into effect in the state of California, which has affected everything nationally, and it deals with formaldehyde. The wood was old, it was sinker wood, it was taken from the Great Lakes, but it had been processed, and then somewhere in the process, even after having been in water, there was an issue with formaldehyde, and this was in 1993. The rainbow colors in the core guitar line, because the way the wood was treated, it changed colors over time. So quilt right now is an even bigger problem, because you've got to know where it's coming from, because you've got to know what you're looking at down the road, where you get into that. Finish, you just get into so many issues there. This is our current model that is brand new to this year. It is the McCarty 594. It's a culmination of several different models that we've done down through the years. My employer does not like me to make analogies, but the only way to really present this guitar is to make one. Real quick, if you're a PRS or a Gibson fan, you can tell me what the difference in this guitar is. Anybody want to take a crack at what you're seeing here that you've never seen on a PRS before? Well, we've done two-piece bridges before, but you're right. That is one thing that we're doing a lot more of. But the two most obvious things is we've gone to 4 controls, 2 tones and 2 volumes. Toggle switches on the upper bout, so you kind of have. And the whole basis behind the guitar, the whole name of it, 594, is the relationship. It's dealing with the scale length. Because part of the thing that Paul set out to do in the very beginning on everything, he was wanting a culmination of what Fender did and what Gibson did, but he wanted it at a higher quality, which he's obviously obtained that, stayed with it for 30 years. You can all, the subjectivity of who builds the best guitar, there's 2 ways you can come about that. You can come about it on what the guitar does tonally and feature-wise. You can also come about it from a quality standpoint. Nobody beats us that builds as many guitars. There's some fine smaller luthiers out there that equal us. Sir, Anderson, Mr. Nags that formerly worked for us, they're all building a great instrument. They don't do the numbers that we do and maintain the quality with that kind of volume. But the 594, several things have gone into it. We changed the scale length. We had always done, the predominant PRS scale is 25 inches, but we've done a lot of 24.5. We'd even done a few things where we played with a few different deals on doing a single cut guitar in a 25-inch scale. The whole thing was to try and get to the Les Paul vibe, but the problem with Les Pauls, of those of you that own them, they're great for what they are, the 100 hertz fundamental in the low end sets them apart. On a Les Paul, when you plug it in, the low end, you feel it as much as you hear it. What we set out to do with the 594 was to try and obtain that, but not end up with the muddiness. Also manipulate the scale length to where if you've ever owned a short scale guitar, anybody in here a Les Paul player? What gauge of strings do you run on it?
Tens.
What do you run on? Like, do you stay consistently with tens on every guitar?
Nines on tenders.
Most people run a heavier gauge on a Gibson scale length. What we wanted to do was to get the guitar where the intonation was not an issue, where you don't have overtones where you don't want them. We did that by manipulating the scale length. We also increased the depth of the guitar, which we've done on a few other models, but not in the scale length. We went to the two-piece bridge, and the most notable, the guitar has a 5815 LT, which, if you know about the history of PRS guitars over the past 10 years, we came out with a pickup called a 5708 back in 2007. The whole, kind of, I don't want to get too long into this and bore you, but what happened was Gibson, the original, everyone in here knows what a PAF pickup is. Does everybody know what, on Gibson PAF, where that kind of, right, okay, kind of where it sits in history and tonally what it is. Well, the machines that were originally done that Gibson did not own, but they had brought on board when the whole humbucking thing came about in the 50s, jump forward, those machines wound up available in 2006 that made the wire. So they were first offered to Gibson. Gibson passed on it, thought that they would make nice museum curios, and originally entertained the idea of putting the machines, at that time Gibson had several of, if any of you have been to Nashville, Gibson cafes, and they were going to put the machines in them as like a historical curio. And the guys that owned them thought that there was, with all of the hoopla involved around vintage pickups, aftermarket pickups and everything going on, thought that there was a market for that. They approached Paul. We ended up with the machines. We ended up with an exclusive right to the wire. We basically went back in 2007. We duplicated as close as we could to the original PF design in wire, content, insulation, magnets, everything. And we wound up with the 5708 pickup, which, an incredible pickup. Jump forward, we've made some improvements. It's now the 5815 LT. We still do the 5708, but the transparency of the pickup altogether has just made what I think is probably the most incredible guitar that PRS has ever done. I mean, it definitely has a vintage vibe. There's several other things that they've done, but it's a big jump forward in a short scale guitar. When we're done here, anyone that wants to come up, I'd like everyone to come up that wants to and play it, plug it in, give it a listen, see the difference.
You mentioned Les Paul, most people go up in the string gauge. What are you guys stringing that one at?
We're still putting 10s. We're putting 10 to 46 as a standard gauge. You know, we've done a few things on the bridge where the intonation is a lot more controllable on a short scale guitar. A lot of different things there that where, you know, overtones on a Les Paul, that 100 hertz fundamental that you feel as much as you hear it, that's great, except those overtones can make that neck pickup get, you know, a little bit out of, but you still have your Sunburst Series 245.
Yes.
The guitar he has was the first single cut that we did with the 5708 pickup. We launched it. We do an event at the factory every year that I would encourage anyone here, whether you own a PRS guitar or not, to come to every year. It's totally free. It's called the PRS Experience. We bring in tons of artists. We release a lot of new product. It's hands-on. You can tour the factory. It doesn't cost you a thing. All you have to do is get there and cover the hotel when you're there. But you get an idea of everything. How many years have you been? How many have you been to?
4, I think, and 30th anniversary, they're knocking on the street.
I would encourage anyone to come if you really want to see what goes on at PRS, because you'll get an inside. You can walk the factory. We keep the factory, we scale it back to where we've got a little more room, but the factory runs full blown while you're there. You can see everything. You can talk to everyone there. Any workstation, sanders, finish guys, the whole 9 yards. I would encourage you to come.
Where's the factory?
Factory's in Maryland, Stevensville. It's on Kent Island, which is an island that sits out in the middle of the Chesapeake. If you have a fear of heights or suspension bridges, you'll have to go a long way around and come up through. You have to go a long way and come up through
Baltimore or something.
No, if you go through Baltimore, you've got to come across the Bay Bridge, which, unless you've ever ditched an airplane in a bay, you'll get queasy when you go across it. But otherwise, it is on an island. But I would encourage anyone to come that has any interest in that. But can anybody throw me some questions? Anything anyone wants to know in particular? I mean, yes, sir.
Could you tell us the story of how Paul Smith got started in making guitars? I heard it from the salesman
That actually wound up as on Paul
Rick
just
Parent, who was a salesman at the store, told me about it.
well.
You had some things to add. I don't know if,
Well, how it wound up, how it got brought to attention. Paul turned
Hey,
60
if
this
I,
year.
could you use the microphone? I can't hear you back there.
Paul turned 60 this year, and how this story came up is Dan actually asked me if it was factual, because the story wound up on a gentleman that, his name is Rick Parent. He's a rep in the industry. He's been in the industry for years, for a long time, but he was originally a salesman at Washington Music, where Paul grew up around, worked there later on, but early on, Paul decided he wanted to play guitar, so he started coming in and hanging out in Washington Music. Well, they all ran from him. I mean, he didn't have a driver's license, so he wasn't 16. Yeah, and he came in, well, what wound up happening was, it was his birthday, and he'd been hounding his mother. Well, come one Saturday morning, she shows up with Paul at the store, and she's coming in, and all the management sees it. Rick Parent, the salesman, sees it, and one of the guys, Chuck Levin's assistant, comes up, who's the owner. So Levin's on the company, and they show up and they said, man, you're the one that's been dealing with him, and now they'd run him out a couple of times. They just had all they could handle, and so what winds up happening is that, you're the one that's dealing with him, so his mother's coming with him, so you can deal with his mother. So
Why would they say something like that?
Paul's an intense individual, and I'm assuming back in the day he was still as intense when he was a young man. So they wind up. She comes in, and the first thing she does is she asks who's been handling my son. And he's expecting to get blazed on the deal. And what it was is she catches him off on the corner, and she takes him aside and says, okay, here's the deal. You're the one that's been putting up with him. So I don't care what he wants. You sell me. I know how sales is, so you sell me what you make the most money on, because you've put up with him. So the story kind of stopped there. I've heard this from a couple of different people, and nobody ever told me whether they sold him what he wanted or sold him what they wanted him to have. I don't know on that. But Paul later went to work for the company. The Levins were very good to Paul, man. They stayed behind. They're still very supportive of him to this day. I mean, and if you're ever in the Washington area, you should drop by and see. It's a gigantic store. But Paul was there for several years. He became the repairman. Went on from there to do other things, worked for other companies, and then started his own thing. And here's where he's wound up. He's come a long way. He's done very well. Yes, sir.
Are all the pickups hand wound? Because I saw them hand winding some.
Well, we don't do a hand wind. Now what we do is we hand assemble. But for consistency, the bobbins are CNC wound. So we want to stay, the main thing there is consistency. I mean, that's what we're after. The bobbins are hand wound. All the final assembly, yes, is hand done. I mean, you get down to where what is, no, we're not sitting there with manual turners and manual counters like they were using 50 years ago. You know, we do hand solder the bobbins. The base plates are all hand, you know, everything. But we're after consistency. The same thing that we do in everything in production. If you've watched the videos, the one that Dan has running, there's also countless ones on YouTube that you can take a look at. If you want to look at one on YouTube, the best one, in my opinion, and there's several, but there's one that's actually sponsored by Harmony Central, the website, and it's 4 parts. And watch that one. That one's very good. That's one of the most current where you can really get, there's one newer, but it moves a little fast and you don't get to see as much. There's one put out by the company that does a lot of the CNC programming for us. It's good, but it's a little fast paced and you don't, it's more towards what they're doing software wise than what we're doing. But we utilize a lot of CNC. We do a ton of it. The thing, there you get into the thing, I know people come down on the thing about what is handmade and what, but consistency in cutting, that's the main thing to keep a control on everything. Now if you watch those videos, you'll see one thing that we still do entirely by hand is sanding. Whether it's at the finish level or it's in the top carving, any of that, we still do, that's all hand done, you can see.
The body, I saw it.
It's all the finish work is done that way. You know, we still go
On all the lines?
on yes sir, on everything American. Now we don't, the import line, there's a lot of automation involved in that, and I'm not even going to use the term CNC. It's a Korean facility. Some of that is automated, and you can, the guitar is still a lot of quality, but you can look, the main thing that hand sanding does is when you look at a dish top, when you look at a carved top, you where the bevels are graded out and the contours, I mean, it's just, you can watch those videos and you'll see them, you can tell that the guys and the women who are doing it, they hold the guitar as if they were, just watch them, and you can tell that, you get that vibe that this is right, I'm done with it, or you get the vibe that no, this needs work here, and everything is done on that. There's multi-stages that we do on it, whether it's, prep or whether it's finishing. Everybody's surprised after they tour the factory, even before, people that don't, there's still a lot of people that don't watch a lot of the videos and stuff, but people get surprised on the finish work, even on when we do top coats and stuff, how we handle that, and everybody's amazed that we do that by hand at this point, and we still do all of it. So
I guess it would be labor intensive to wind every pickup.
It would, but the main thing there is consistency. The pickup thing has become monumental with us after winding up with these machines. We've come closer in here. I'm not going to be the PRS rep because I'm a pickup tweaker. Paul and I go through this all the time. There's a new company right now that's if any of you guys are into boutique pickups, there's a new company out of Croatia called Wiz, and they are making an incredible PAF, but they have no environmental guidelines to follow. So the materials that they're using in the bobbins are still 100% 50s historically correct. We're a big company. We have to tie the bobbins together in the pickup with lead-free solder, which has a high magnesium content. And then the boutique guys will argue back and forth. But not as the PRS rep, as a pickup tweaker. The 5708 and the 5815 have come closer to a true PAF than anybody anywhere has done, particularly in mass production. Seymour Duncan, DiMarzio, any of those people, none of their PAF type product is anywhere close to what ours are. But we have to do the CNC thing for consistency. That's, you get the same pickup that the gentleman over here gets, so, Anybody else that I can? Any question? How many people here actually own a PRS guitar? How many? All right, yeah, Derek, you don't count. Yeah. How many do you own? How many PRS guitars?
I think there's 8 right now. At one point I had 12.
Slacken up. What do
I have
you,
an acoustic
oh, okay. All right.
or acoustic electric.
Who else? I know, what do you have?
I see.
Great guitar. I know you do. Well, what I'd like to do is, if anybody would like to come up, take a look at all these. If you have any questions on it once you're looking at it, playing it, feel free to hit me up.